It was a calm afternoon when Michelle Obama sat at her desk in the White House. The soft hum of the day was barely interrupted by the occasional shuffle of papers. She was focused on the tasks ahead, writing speeches and preparing for upcoming events. The air felt light, yet there was always something underneath, a quiet buzz of the unknown that seemed to hang around, even on peaceful days. The door to her office opened, and one of her staff members walked in, holding a small, neatly wrapped package. Michelle looked up from her papers, her eyes narrowing slightly in curiosity. "This came for you," the staff member said, placing the box gently on her desk. There was no return address, no markings that would hint at who had sent it. The package was simple, elegantly wrapped in smooth, light brown paper with a thin ribbon tied around it. Michelle's first thought was that it might be from a colleague or a friend. But something about it felt different. It was strange to receive a gift with no name on it, especially considering the political atmosphere she had been surrounded by for so long. She had dealt with gifts before, some public, some private, but this felt unexpected. She leaned forward, her fingers carefully undoing the ribbon. The wrapping paper slid off easily, revealing a plain wooden box underneath. She hesitated for a moment, her mind racing with questions. Who could have sent this? And why? The possibilities swirled in her mind, but she couldn't quite settle on an answer. She slowly lifted the lid, her curiosity growing with each second. Inside the box lay a delicate, handcrafted vase. It was simple yet elegant, with a design that seemed to blend both history and modernity. The craftsmanship was undeniable. It was a beautiful piece, the kind that would catch anyone's eye for its quality and thoughtfulness. The vase was made of fine porcelain, with intricate patterns etched into its surface, reflecting the light in a way that made it almost glow. There were no words or labels on it, just the vase itself. Michelle sat back in her chair, staring at the vase. It was unlike any gift she had received before. There was something personal about it, but also something formal. It was clear that a lot of care had gone into making it. But who would send her such a thing, and why? Her mind immediately went to one person: Donald Trump. The political rivalry, the tension, the years of public conflict between their families, it all came rushing back. Could it really be from him? After all, this kind of gift didn't seem like something that would come from a casual acquaintance. This felt too intentional, too meaningful. Michelle reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. She debated whether or not to call Barack. She had to make sense of this. But deep down, she felt that it was more than just a random gesture. It was a message, one that might be far more important than she realized. As she sat there, the silence in the room grew, the weight of the moment settling around her. She had no idea what this gift would lead to, but one thing was clear. It was a turning point, even if she couldn't yet understand what direction it would take. Michelle stared at the vase, still unsure of what to make of it. The sunlight that streamed through the office window caught the delicate patterns on the porcelain, causing it to shimmer. It was a beautiful piece, but its mystery only deepened the more she looked at it. As much as she tried to focus on the work in front of her, the thought of the vase kept pulling her attention back. The decision to call Barack was inevitable. Michelle wasn't sure what to make of the gesture, but she knew he would offer a calm, measured perspective. She picked up her phone and dialed his number, waiting as it rang. When he picked up, she greeted him quickly. "Barack, I need to talk to you about something strange," Michelle said, her voice calm but curious. "What's going on?" Barack asked, recognizing the change in her tone. "Something unexpected arrived today. A package," Michelle began. "I've been staring at it for a while, but I'm not sure what to think." Barack listened closely, sensing that this was more than just an ordinary gift. "What's inside?" he asked. "I don't know what to make of it," Michelle replied. "It's a vase. A handcrafted, beautiful vase. The kind of thing you'd expect to see in an art gallery. Not something someone would just send you. And there's no note. Just nothing." Barack was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Did you check the return address?" he asked. "No return address. No card. Just a tag that says, 'A gift from an old friend,'" Michelle explained. Her mind was racing. The possibility that the gift might be from Donald Trump lingered in her thoughts. It seemed impossible, considering their past. Years of tension, heated arguments, and public clashes. What would he want with her now? Why send a gift with no explanation? "Maybe it's nothing," Michelle said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than just a random gift." Barack thought for a moment. "You know, this could be something bigger. It might not be about politics. It could be a gesture of goodwill. But whatever it is, you need to think carefully about how you respond. Michelle nodded, appreciating Barack's advice. He was always able to stay calm in situations like this, and his perspective often helped her see things in a different light. I just don't understand why now, why this, she said, still unsure of the meaning behind the gift. Sometimes, Michelle, things happen that we don't immediately understand. Maybe this is a way of closing the door on old conflicts, or maybe it's just someone trying to make a statement. But whatever it is, you don't have to rush into a decision, Barack said. Take your time and think it through. Michelle let out a small sigh. You're right. I guess I'll just wait and see what comes next. After hanging up, Michelle sat back in her chair, her thoughts swirling. She wasn't sure if this was the beginning of something new or just a strange coincidence. But for now, she decided to keep the vase on her desk as a reminder of the unexpected things life could throw her way. It was a mystery, and she would need time to figure it out. The next morning, Michelle sat at her desk again, the vase still sitting in front of her, its delicate curves catching the light. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about it. Every time she looked at it, a wave of curiosity washed over her. Who would send such a gift? And why leave no clues about the sender? Despite her many questions, she still couldn't figure it out. She decided to take Barack's advice to heart. It had been a day since she received the gift, and her mind kept returning to the idea of finding out who was behind it. She felt a quiet urgency to understand the meaning behind this mysterious gesture. What if it was an attempt to begin a new chapter, to repair old relationships? What if it was something more? She couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the answer was just out of reach. Taking a deep breath, Michelle picked up her phone again. This time, she wasn't calling Barack. Instead, she decided to reach out to someone closer to the source. She sent a short but polite message to Trump's office, asking if they could provide any details about the gift. She wasn't sure what kind of response to expect, but she hoped for something that would at least clarify the situation. She sat back in her chair, her fingers tapping nervously on the desk as she waited for a reply. The minutes felt like hours. The quiet of the office was only broken by the occasional shuffle of paper or the distant sound of footsteps in the hallway. Every time her phone buzzed, Michelle felt a jolt of anticipation. But it wasn't until later that afternoon that she received a response. The message came from one of Trump's assistants, and it was short and to the point. The gift was sent personally by Mr. Trump. It is meant as a gesture of goodwill, nothing more. Michelle stared at the screen, reading the message again. A gesture of goodwill, she repeated to herself, trying to make sense of it. She had expected some kind of explanation, but this was so simple, almost too simple, yet it carried weight. There was no mention of politics, no hidden agenda, just an attempt to reach out, to offer something kind. Her thoughts turned to Barack. She needed to talk to him again. She picked up the phone, dialing his number, and waited for him to pick up. When he did, she didn't hesitate to explain the message she had received. So it was from him, Michelle said, still processing the meaning behind the words, and he says it's just a gesture of goodwill. Barack's voice was steady, reassuring as always. It sounds like he's trying to do something different, Michelle. Maybe he's trying to build bridges where there used to be walls. It's not the kind of thing you'd expect from him. But then again, maybe that's the point. Michelle considered his words. She wasn't sure what to think, but she knew one thing for sure. This gift, this gesture, had changed the way she saw things. It was as though the old politics were being set aside, just for a moment, allowing a glimpse of something new. Well, I guess we'll see what happens next, Michelle said thoughtfully. But for now, I'll just hold on to it and keep it in mind. Barack's response was simple. Take your time, Michelle. There's no rush. Michelle looked at the vase once more, the light glinting off its surface. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, or maybe it was just a passing moment. Either way, she knew it would be a memory she wouldn't easily forget. Later that evening, Barack sat in the quiet living room of their home, a cup of tea in his hands, as he thought over the conversation he had with Michelle earlier. The unexpected gift had stirred up a lot of thoughts for both of them. Normally, Barack was the one who approached situations like this with patience and caution, but even he had been taken aback by the simplicity and timing of the gesture. When Michelle had called him about the vase, his first instinct was to be cautious. A gift from Donald Trump. It seemed out of place, especially after all the years of public disagreements and the political tension between their families. But as he thought more about it, he began to wonder if there was something deeper behind the gift. He had known Donald Trump for years, and though their relationship had often been tense, Barack was no stranger to unexpected acts of kindness or change. Politics had a way of drawing lines between people, but sometimes those lines could blur, leaving room for something new to emerge. Michelle walked into the room, the vase still in her hands. She placed it carefully on the table, its smooth surface gleaming in the soft light. Barack looked at it for a moment before turning his attention to Michelle. He could see the uncertainty still in her eyes. She was a master at handling complicated situations, but even she couldn't shake the feeling that this gift meant more than just a friendly gesture. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," Barack started, his voice calm and steady. "Maybe we need to look at this gift for what it is, not what we expect it to be." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "You think it's that simple, just a gesture of goodwill?" Barack nodded slowly. "It's not about what we want it to be. Maybe it's just what it is. Trump has always been a man of surprises. We both know that. Maybe this is his way of showing that he's ready to move on from the past. Politics has a way of keeping people divided, but sometimes there's room for something else." Michelle was quiet for a moment, her thoughts processing what Barack had said. He was right, of course. In the world they both inhabited, change didn't always come in predictable ways. Sometimes it took a small gesture to spark something larger, something that couldn't be planned. "Do you think this means he's ready to stop fighting?" Michelle asked, her voice softer now, more thoughtful. Barack considered the question. "I don't know. But maybe it's the beginning of something. Or maybe it's just a reminder that no matter how strong the division is, people can still make choices to change things. Even small ones." Michelle sighed, but there was a hint of understanding in her eyes. She had been so focused on the past, on the years of rivalry, that it was hard to imagine anything other than what they had already known. But maybe Barack was right. Maybe this unexpected gift was the first step toward something different, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. "I guess we'll just have to wait and see," Michelle said, her voice steady now. "But for now, I'll hold on to it. It's a reminder that things can change, even when we least expect it." Barack smiled gently. "Exactly. Sometimes change doesn't come with grand speeches. It starts with small, unexpected moments." The two of them sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. The vase remained on the table between them, a symbol of something they couldn't yet fully understand. But in that quiet room, they both knew that something had shifted, maybe not in the world, but in the way they were looking at it. The days following the unexpected gift felt different for Michelle. The vase sat on her desk, a silent reminder of the strange gesture, and though she had tried to focus on other matters, her mind kept drifting back to it. She couldn't ignore the feeling that something important was happening, something bigger than the simple gift itself. Michelle had always been a person who valued understanding. She didn't like mysteries, especially ones that seemed to hold more meaning than they appeared to on the surface. The more she thought about the gift, the more she realized that it wasn't just about the vase. It was a signal, perhaps even an invitation, to think differently about the past and about the people who had been part of it. After her conversation with Barack, Michelle had decided to take action. If she wanted to understand what was really going on, she couldn't just sit back and wait for answers to come to her. She had to reach out, to dig deeper. But the question remained, how could she approach the situation? It wasn't as simple as sending a thank you note for a gift. The political history between her and Donald Trump was long, complicated, and often painful. Any communication with him would require careful thought. One morning, as she sat at her desk sipping coffee, Michelle made up her mind. She picked up her phone and sent a brief message to the assistant who had responded to her earlier. This time she asked for more details, a clear explanation of why Trump had chosen to send such a gift, and perhaps more importantly, what his intentions were. She didn't expect an immediate answer, but she felt that this was the only way to uncover the truth. Hours passed, and just as Michelle was about to move on to other tasks, her phone buzzed with a reply. It was from the same assistant. The message was concise but informative. "Mr. Trump felt it was time to send a sign of goodwill," the message read. "He has been reflecting on past events and believes that healing old wounds is important, even when there are differences." The vase was meant as a simple gesture, no hidden agenda, just a step toward peace. Michelle read the message twice, trying to digest its meaning. There it was again, healing old wounds. The word stuck with her. Was this truly what it seemed? Could Trump really be trying to build a bridge after everything that had happened? She leaned back in her chair, letting out a slow breath. The message was vague, yet it hinted at something deeper. She had always believed in the importance of understanding and growth. But this situation was different. The gesture was not just about politics, it was about human connection and the possibility that people could change, even in the most unexpected ways. Michelle knew she couldn't jump to conclusions, but she also knew that this was a rare opportunity to think beyond the divisions of the past. She decided to sit with this new information for a while longer, to let it settle before making any decisions. But in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but wonder if this small, quiet moment could turn into something much more significant in the future. Perhaps this was just the beginning of a story that neither she nor anyone else had anticipated. For now, Michelle had made peace with the mystery of the vase. She wouldn't push for more answers right away, but she would keep them in her thoughts. Change often came in small, subtle ways, and sometimes it was these quiet moments that held the most meaning. The next few days felt like a blur for Michelle. She went through her usual routine, attending meetings, speaking at events, and making sure everything was running smoothly. Yet in the back of her mind, the gift from Donald Trump lingered, still unexplained. She had decided to give herself some time to reflect, but the questions still tugged at her thoughts. Was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or was there something else behind the gesture? As the days passed, Michelle received a message from the assistant again. This time it was a phone call, and it caught her by surprise. It wasn't long before she recognized the voice on the other end. "Hello, Michelle," the assistant greeted warmly. "Mr. Trump would like to speak with you directly. He believes it's important to have an open conversation about the vase and the meaning behind it." Michelle felt a rush of uncertainty. But direct conversation with Donald Trump, it was something she hadn't expected. After everything that had happened between their families over the years, a phone call from him felt like a step into uncharted territory. She had always preferred clarity and honesty, but this was new. Taking a deep breath, Michelle agreed to the call. She couldn't avoid the questions forever. If she wanted to truly understand what was happening, she had to be brave enough to hear it from him. The call was set for the following afternoon. When the time came, Michelle stood in front of her desk, a sense of anticipation mixed with caution in her chest. The phone rang, and she answered it, trying to steady her thoughts. "Hello, Michelle." Trump's voice came through, deep and direct. "I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me." "Of course," Michelle replied, her voice calm. "I've been thinking a lot about the vase and the message you sent. I wanted to understand more about why you sent it." There was a slight pause on the other end before Trump responded. "I understand it might have come as a surprise," he said, "but after all these years of conflict, I felt it was time to do something different. The vase is just a symbol, a small gesture to show that I'm ready to move forward. Politics has kept us at odds for so long, but I believe that healing is possible, even if it starts with something as simple as a gift." Michelle absorbed his words, carefully considering them. It was unlike anything she had expected. The tone in his voice wasn't confrontational or defensive. It was, for lack of a better word, sincere. There was a vulnerability in his words that Michelle hadn't anticipated. "You're right," she responded after a moment of reflection. "Healing doesn't always come easily, especially after everything that has happened. But I'm open to understanding your perspective, even if I still have questions." Trump seemed to take that as a positive sign. "I appreciate that, Michelle. I know we have our differences, but I think we can both agree that the country, and the people in it, deserve something better than division. The vase was just a start, a sign that I want to be part of that change." Michelle let his words sit in the air for a moment. It wasn't an apology, but it was something different, something that didn't feel like a typical political move. She had never expected to hear these kinds of words from him, and yet here they were. "Thank you for your honesty," Michelle said, her voice steady but thoughtful. "I'll take some time to think about what you've said, but this conversation is a step forward, and that means something." As they ended the call, Michelle sat in silence for a few moments, her mind racing. She had never imagined she'd be having a conversation like this, but in the end, she realized that sometimes understanding came in the most unexpected ways. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Michelle felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change after all. The call with Donald Trump had left Michelle with a sense of quiet contemplation. She hadn't expected the conversation to go as it did. There was no bitterness in his voice, no hidden agenda behind his words. He was not asking for forgiveness, nor was he trying to claim victory over past disagreements. It was simply an invitation to consider something different, a chance to step away from the old ways of thinking and approach things from a new angle. For a long while after the call, Michelle couldn't quite shake the feeling that something significant had shifted. It wasn't just the unexpected kindness of the gift or the fact that Trump had reached out personally. It was the realization that perhaps this moment was a reflection of a bigger truth. In her years of public service, she had often focused on the work, the issues, the policies, the people. She had built a life of action and doing. But now she found herself in a position where understanding was as important as action. She thought about the country, about the divisions that had grown wider over the years. Politics had often painted things in stark contrasts, right or wrong, good or bad. But her conversation with Trump had reminded her that the world wasn't always black and white. People were capable of change, even when it seemed unlikely. Maybe, just maybe, this was one of those moments. Over the next few days, Michelle allowed herself time to reflect on what this could mean. The vase still sat on her desk, but now it seemed different to her. It was no longer just a mysterious object. It was a symbol of something deeper, a quiet offering of peace, perhaps, but also a challenge to look beyond the past. She didn't know if it would lead to anything meaningful or lasting, but she understood now that there was value in considering it. Michelle spent time talking to some of her closest friends and advisors, asking them what they thought. Their responses varied, but one theme remained clear. People were ready for change. They were tired of the divisions that kept everyone apart. And while it wasn't always easy to believe that something as small as a vase could spark real change, Michelle couldn't ignore the possibility. Sometimes the smallest gestures were the ones that carried the most weight. By the end of the week, Michelle knew what she had to do. She would write a letter, not to Trump directly, but to the world that was watching. It wasn't about endorsing any one person or political agenda. It was about sending a message that there was space for hope, even when it seemed like hope was in short supply. Sitting down at her desk, Michelle took a deep breath. Her pen hovered over the paper for a moment before she began to write. The words flowed easily, as if the letter had been waiting to be written for some time. She wrote about unity, about finding common ground, and about the power of small steps. When she finished, she placed the letter in an envelope and sealed it. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a declaration of change, but rather an invitation to start thinking differently, to open doors that had long been closed. The vase, in its simplicity, had sparked this thought, and Michelle was ready to share it with others. As she stood up and looked at the vase once more, a small smile crossed her face. No one could predict what would come next, but for the first time in a long while, Michelle felt hopeful. A few weeks had passed since Michelle had sent the letter. Life had returned to its usual rhythm. There were still many challenges to face, many issues to address, but the weight of the vase and the conversation with Donald Trump had settled in her mind. She hadn't expected anything immediate to come from it, but there was a quiet peace in knowing she had taken a step toward something new. One morning, as Michelle was preparing for a meeting, her assistant handed her a stack of letters. As she sifted through them, one envelope stood out. It was a plain, simple envelope with no logo or return address. With curiosity, she opened it and unfolded the letter inside. It was brief, but the words hit her in a way she hadn't anticipated. Dear Michelle, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for your letter. It wasn't just a message, it was a reminder of what we're all working toward. Healing, understanding, and finding common ground aren't easy tasks, but they are the only way forward. I'm committed to doing my part. Best regards, Donald Trump. Michelle sat back in her chair, the letter still in her hands. There it was again, healing, understanding, moving forward. It wasn't a grand gesture, nor was it an invitation to something bigger, but it was enough. It was a sign that things could change, that even the smallest steps could make a difference. In this world of constant noise and division, here was a letter that spoke of possibility. She thought about everything that had led her to this moment. The vase, the phone call, the letter. None of it had been planned. None of it had been expected. Yet it had all come together in a way that had created an opening for something different. For the first time in a long while, Michelle felt like the pieces were starting to fall into place. The world outside her office window was still as busy as ever, full of challenges and debates, but in that quiet moment, Michelle felt a small sense of hope. It wasn't about fixing everything all at once. It wasn't about grand speeches or big actions. It was about small, quiet steps that began to build something new. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. She stood up, walked over to the desk, and looked at the vase again. It was still there, sitting quietly in its place, but now it felt different. It had started as a symbol of mystery, but it had transformed into something much more. It was a reminder that change didn't always have to come in a loud or dramatic way. Sometimes the most meaningful change began with something simple, a gift, a conversation, a letter. Michelle knew that this was just the beginning. There was still much to be done, many bridges to be built, and many difficult conversations to have. But she also knew that real change didn't happen overnight. It took time. It took patience. It took willingness to listen and understand, even when the path ahead seemed uncertain. As she got ready for her meeting, Michelle felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead was long, but for the first time in a while, she was hopeful that the seeds of change had been planted. And perhaps one day, they would grow into something that could make a real difference.